Welcome to the Dr. Diane Show, where we explore revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. With over 20 years of expertise as a mindset warrior, perspective shifter, and unshakable optimist, I am dedicated to helping you reach your wildest dreams in business, health, performance, and relationships. Learn about the power of thought and how it shapes your life to take risks, change careers, find love, go on adventures, and live passionately with me, Dr. Diane. Get ready for revolutionary ways of thinking, being, and creating an amazing life. The Dr. Diane Show starts now. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Diane Hayden, and you are listening to the Dr. Diane Show on Transformation Talk Radio. Stay with us for the next hour, where we will explore revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul. Join me on the first and third Thursdays on the show, where I have experts from around the country teaching you cutting-edge therapies on longevity medicine, natural health, mindset, and soul purpose to help you shift your perspective and become a mindset warrior like me. And please like and subscribe to my channel, Dr. Diane Hayden. I'm excited today to have two wonderful women with me on the show. Melissa Lewis, who's an RN BSN, and she is a certified hospice and palliative care nurse, end-of-life navigator, integrative wellness nurse care consultant, Zen meditation teacher, founder of Heart Space for Healing and Hospice. For more than 30 years, Melissa has helped individuals, families, and healthcare professionals navigate life's most profound transitions by integrating modern medicine with contemplative wisdom. As the lineage holder of the Clear Light Meditation for the Dying Terma Mind Treasure, she shares practices that help people meet life's greatest challenges with greater presence, clarity, and peace. And Jessica Kowal, RN BSN, is the owner of Compass Nurse Consulting, a private geriatric care consulting practice serving Connecticut. With over 10 years of clinical nursing experience spanning hospital case management, home health, hospice, and skilled nursing, Jessica helps older adults and their families navigate the complexities of aging, from medical care and medication to safety, changing needs, and difficult decisions. She coordinates care, advocates for her clients, and makes sure nothing falls through the cracks. She connects the dots so families can stop managing it all alone in their heads. So welcome, Melissa and Jessica. How are you both today?
Very well. Thank you so much for hosting us, Diane. Really looking forward to speaking with your community.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for having us here.
Yeah, so this is going to be really interesting because you guys do separate things, but a lot of what you do kind of also blends together and assisting each other. And so we'll talk about a lot of that in terms of just, home care, hospice, end of life, all of that kind of stuff, which I think is just so important for people. And honestly, conversations that we don't often have, unfortunately. And it's just one of those things where I think people just don't want to talk about it, right? Even though it's such a necessary conversation to have.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So let's start off with what does individualized care mean to you? And I'm going to just throw questions out for you guys, and you can kind of just jump in and
I can take that one. Yeah, I'm really glad you asked. Part of why we're so excited about this collaboration is because we're able to serve the community on a broader continuum of care throughout the entirety of life, enhancing quality of life for the rest of life. Living and dying aren't one size fits all, so our care shouldn't be either. Two people can have the exact same diagnosis and need completely different things. We have different personalities, histories, beliefs, relationships, nervous systems, different ways that we're wired. So some people just want information. Some people feel overwhelmed by that. Some people want everyone around them, and others need quiet. One person finds comfort in prayer and another one wants Led Zeppelin playing. So before we ever ask, what do we do with this diagnosis? I think it's really important to ask, who's this person and what matters most to them? That's where good care begins, and that's at the heart of our practice.
Yeah. I think that both of us have the thought that we start with your story. and what matters to you. And like Melissa said, you might have two completely different diagnoses. You might have, or two of the same diagnoses and want two completely different things. And what does good outcomes look like for you? Um, could be different for everybody, is different, usually different for everybody.
Yeah, so as you're speaking, I want to back up just a little bit because you both have separate businesses, but you came together. And so my listeners love to know people's journeys. Like, how did you guys find each other, and how did it come to be that you met and you decided that you were going to do some type of collaborative work together?
It's a really good question. I took a leap of faith. I value community, I value collaboration, and I just found Jessica online and I literally just wrote to her and I said, "This is what I'm doing, this is what I'm about. I'm excited to find like-minded spirits." And she was along for the ride. So she said, "Absolutely, let's meet." And I mean, Jess, I'll let you speak to that, but it just felt like a really good match.
Yeah, I feel the same. I think especially with nurse consulting, I'm setting people up with services. So I'm always looking to meet new people and see what services people have to offer. And although I do have hospice experience, Melissa has much more hospice experience than me, and she provides a different type of care that might be more valuable toward the end of people's lives. So I was happy to get her message and happy to meet with her. And since then, we've talked many times and introduced each other to different people as well in the community. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, that's what I do that all the time at Natural Nutmeg. I mean, I'm basically trying to connect practitioners that I think, you know, would really be great as far as like a referral system for each other, or complementary types of practices and things like that. And especially for what you guys are doing, like I think it's so hard for families to find information, or to make these decisions, and they really need people who can direct them to you know all like all the different resources along the way of this path, right? So
Yeah.
I
And
love what you guys are doing.
we
Yeah.
both have different experiences. We are both RNs. And so, she may know of resources that I have not heard of and that are in the community. I try my best to keep up with what's going on, and I'm setting people up with support services, but I can't know everything. So having other smart people that are in the same field of helping people and is a great resource to have.
Yeah. So before we get into like just the bigger questions about hospice and people going down that path, or home care and that kind of thing, what is something you wish more older adults knew about navigating healthcare and aging before they actually needed help?
Mm. It's really important that people take the time to prepare while things are calm. Once a crisis hits, your options dwindle down dramatically. People are scrambling to find information, second guessing themselves, and wondering where to turn next, not having the resources in place, not having had those conversations with their families really limits the resources available and the quality of life that's available in that moment. So the more that people prepare in advance, the more options they have, and their independence is increased, and their quality of life is increased. Their opportunity to really take the time with their loved ones in a way that really truly matters. Focus on the relationship, focus on the care for the individual rather than scrambling to sign all the paperwork and find all the keys and all of that.
Yeah, but I completely agree with you. And I think that for whatever reason, it's something that people keep pushing off, right? It's like, well, I don't really want to think about that. So I'm not like at that age yet. So I think it's a hard place to get them. Like, let's say you have an aging parent. It's a hard place to get them to sometimes.
Mhm. Yeah, I think also waiting, waiting for a crisis to happen, like Melissa said, it limits your options when you're there in that crisis. And if you set up supports prior to being in a crisis, you have people in your corner that you can turn to. I advocate for my clients, and a lot of people do call me when they're in a crisis. It's easier for me, and for the family if I know them prior to a crisis, if I know what their goals are and I know what their outcomes and their resources are, um, it's much easier to navigate that situation and get what you want out of it if you start before you're in a crisis or set up support systems before you're in a crisis. It makes your options of what comes next um, much more palatable as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I think a lot of times maybe the hesitation or fear is that people think that they're going to be told that they're giving up control, maybe, or that accepting help means they're giving up control, or someone's going to tell them they need to move. Like, how do you approach those conversations?
So, if you have the capacity to make your own decisions, then the decision is yours. My job is not to come in and tell people what to do. My job is to come in, assess the situation, see what barriers there are to getting help, um, and see what risks there are to make, as far as moving away from home, what risks are there by staying home and just making those clear and seeing how we can support those and make them safer. If you have the capacity to make the decision, then the decision is yours, and we're here to help support those decisions and make sure that you know what all the options are.
Yeah. And I think that's awesome. And I think, having things like this put in place ahead of time are so great. I mean, I have a personal experience with this. My mom fell in her home, and we had to. It was like kind of the last minute thing, and she honestly seemed perfectly fine. It was kind of like a fluke thing, and she'd been walking around all over the place and driving and everything, and then one day that just happens. And we didn't really have anything in place. And I had to, like you guys are saying, I had to scramble and figure out, like, the hospital, the rehab, and what are we going to do after that, all that stuff. So I mean, I can say from firsthand experience, have the conversations ahead of time, as difficult as, they're going to be. It just limits so much or reduces so much stress on the family for
And
sure.
it,
So I love these conversations. We're going to get into a lot more. We're going to take a short break. You're listening to the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. When we come back, we'll be exploring more with Melissa Lewis and Jessica Kowal. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. But before we continue, I want to make sure everyone knows how to contact me. You can find me at www.drdianehayden.com or at either of my two publications, www.naturalnutmeg.com and www.essentialnaples.com. And you can learn more about my two guests today. Melissa Lewis, her website is www.sharingheartspace.com. That's SharingHeartspace.com. And Jessica Kowal at www.compassnurseconsulting.com. And that's spelled CompassNurseConsulting.com. So right before we went to break, I was just talking a little bit about, my personal experience with not having the conversation ahead of time and being in a situation where my mom had fallen, and then, having to, go down that path of kind of scrambling to find all the resources I needed. And when we were on break, Jessica, you were just talking about, like how actually putting stuff in place makes it easier for the person to actually stay independent longer, right?
Yeah, it does. I know that I know that it feels like you're giving up a little bit of independence, but it's all about supporting where you're at. And I have seen where somebody doesn't have that support and they end up in a crisis with those small options and they end up losing more independence. And people who put in the supports earlier end up having more independence for much longer.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, it makes sense, right? Like
And
it's
yet it
for,
feels
go
kind
ahead, Melissa.
it feels a little counterintuitive, right?
Yeah,
When we're leaning into the uncertain, when we prepare, we're creating certainty. It's just a shift in perspective. But once someone finds that flow of getting those resources in place and they start seeing what can be possible, how much more independent they can be, it can make a world of difference.
well, 100%. I mean, if we had talked about that, me and my mother ahead of time, and maybe we had someone start to come in a few days a week or whatever, they might have noticed something, or it might have prevented a fall, right? So
Right?
she absolutely might have been able to stay in her home longer, for sure. Right? I completely, totally understand that. Yeah. So let's talk about hospice. I feel like that's like it's the word that no one wants to talk about. That and making all these decisions for end of life and that kind of thing. But I think there's a lot of misconception around what hospice actually is. So let's just talk about that, clear some of that stuff up.
Absolutely. One of the biggest misconceptions about hospice is that it means you're giving up. It doesn't mean you're giving up. It means you're shifting the goal, the goals of care. We talk about goals of care. Palliative care and hospice care fall under different benefits in Medicare. Palliative care is under the home health certified care benefit, and it's very short lived. It's supporting someone when there's a change in condition, when there's a change in medication, when there's something that we can teach them to help support them through change, and comfort can be part of that. Hospice is when someone has an illness or condition that is life-threatening, that is life-limiting within 6 months, potentially taking its natural course. And once that's in place, once that's determined, if they're not seeking curative treatment, there are so many resources available to people. People don't realize that, they think, oh, well, I have to wait till the very end. And, the earlier you can start hospice, the more resources you have available, the more pieces you have in place so that you can make the most of your time together as a family and have the most independence and comfort for the longest period of time. Another big piece is that people think that hospice means that you have someone coming to your house 24/7. That's not how hospice works. In fact, people are unfortunately very surprised to find that family are very, very much involved and responsible for the care of their loved ones. They can absolutely, if they have the resources, they can hire someone to support that. But ultimately, the nurses come and go, social work comes and goes, spiritual care, all the many benefits and resources, volunteers and art therapy, music therapy, but everybody comes and goes. So the primary care, personal care, day-to-day care falls on the family. So if they do have resources, they can hire support, but ultimately they're responsible. So that's a big undertaking. And it's not something to be taken lightly. It's really important to prepare for that financially, have a plan, knowing who's going to take on that role of responsibility. People don't go into the hospital to start hospice. That's another big misconception. That's only inpatient hospital stays, or only if somebody has symptoms that can't be managed in the home setting. And there's so much that we can do. People think that, they have this fear that dying has to be scary or painful, but it's far from the truth. With modern medicine, especially when we integrate modern medicine and complementary and alternative, modalities, we're able to provide so much comfort, and really have beautiful quality of life to the very end, and support for family beyond.
Yeah, I think interestingly enough, that might have been my misunderstanding too, because when people talk about hospice, it's usually like, oh, the person has 3 days to live. And literally, or let's say maybe a week or something like that. And literally, I think that um that thought is out there that like, oh, well, like a few days a week, that's it. There's going to be people in the house nonstop 24/7. I bet people are pretty surprised to hear what you just said, because
Absolutely.
that's not at all necessarily what it's like.
Yeah, it can be really daunting. And that's part of where we come into play. We're able to help get resources in place on very short notice, sometimes within an hour, sometimes quicker than a traditional home health agency. We are very well connected in the community. The two of us have nearly 50 years combined experience in healthcare. So we're able to see things from many different angles and able to get very creative on making sure that people have everything that they need every step of the way.
Yeah, so maybe just go into that a little bit more. Like how is what you do different from a home care agency or a visiting nurse, or like we're talking about hospice?
So a lot of times we're setting up people with services like that. A visiting nurse is coming in for a skilled need. Medicare pays for skilled nursing visits. There needs to be a reason that they're coming in. They might come in multiple times a week if it's more complex, but it is short term and it ends. Um, they have their one piece that they're looking at. We are looking at the entire picture. So we're your advocates. We are seeing you through all those services. So we have a relationship with you while you're getting nursing services, and when you're at your doctor's appointment, and when you're at your hospital. If you're at your hospital stay, I'm paying attention to what is happening at that hospital. I have experience through hospital case management and visiting nurse as myself and my background. So I have, between us both, we have good knowledge of what each service provides, but there are gaps in between those. So having somebody that is advocating for you throughout those services and helping you set up when that service is needed is important, or somebody that can identify when those extra services are needed.
Yeah, and you really do need a patient advocate in the hospital. And I would say even in like rehab or
Yeah.
nursing homes, because
Yeah.
you'd be surprised like the
Oh, yeah.
things that happen or don't happen or whatever. You absolutely, I feel bad for people that don't have, extended family or whatever, don't have anyone really that can help them. And it's crazy. Like
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
have to go through all the loops and things like that. I can't even imagine my mother having to coordinate everything she had to coordinate, after having had like basically a hip replacement, and then having to now coordinate her like rehab alone and all
Right.
that. It's just, yeah, you need
And
people like you.
and people with multiple specialists taking care of them. They have a primary care, they have a neurologist, a cardiologist, all of these different specialties. Although those doctors are very focused appropriately on their piece, and they may see small pieces from the other doctors, there are gaps that happen. And it's important to have somebody that's really looking at that whole picture and making sure that the doctors have all the information that they need to treat you. Um, it's difficult, and it's not something that you're taught in a class. A lot of adult children find themselves coordinating care, and they were never prepared to do that, but they find themselves falling into that as a parent ages. And it's very overwhelming.
Yeah. There's also this gap that's growing as well, where we have these sandwich generations, right? So we're caring for kids and we're caring for aging parents at the same time, and we're working full time, sometimes multiple jobs.
Mhm.
There's a huge need. People are at great distances. Some people live across the state, sometimes across the world, and they can't be there for every visit. They can't follow up the way that they'd like to, but they want to make sure mom and dad have what they need. The other piece is there's a lot of solo agers now who, worked very hard for their whole lives, and they just don't have necessarily family or friends who are able to step up and serve as an advocate for them throughout the continuum of the care. So that's another piece that we do. We're like professional daughters, if you will. We
I
have the
love that.
eye. Yeah. So yeah, we have the eyes of the nurse experience,
Mhm.
and yet we can manage households. We can make sure that you have every creature comfort that you desire, to maintain the lifestyle that you prefer for as long as possible. So
I love it. I love it. Well, we're going to get into a lot more. We're going to take another quick break. You're listening to the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. I am talking today with Melissa Lewis, and you can learn more about her at www.sharingheartspace.com, and Jessica Kowal at www.compassnurseconsulting.com. And as right before we went to break, we were just, well, first of all, you said a term that I absolutely love, professional daughters. That is like, people are going to remember that. Like that's who you guys are. I love it. Um, and just in general, like all the things you have to do as a patient advocate, really, like, when people are either in the hospital or even somebody who's is still in their home, but they've got all different kinds of doctor's appointments and medications and things like that, for especially for someone who's alone, or maybe their children are in different states. So let's talk just a little bit more about how that all works. Like, do you guys actually go to medical appointments with someone, and do you do things differently because you're both nurses, or how does that look?
So at Compass, I do go to medical appointments with people, and if that helps them, if that's meaningful for them, and my job isn't just to take notes. My job is to be your advocate. It's to make sure that we know why we're going to this appointment, if and to know. And usually I have a relationship with the client at this point, and I've been listening to their symptoms. So um, depending on the person, usually they have their visit, but I'm making sure that those things get brought up and don't get missed, because we are in this healthcare piece where we are in 15-minute doctor visits. And a lot of times that is not a lot of time to think about what you came to say and for the doctor to do their assessment. I'm making sure that those things get to the doctor so that they can make the appropriate decision, and that you get out of the appointment what you needed to get out of the appointment.
Yeah, I love that. And yes, believe me, I mean, I was the one who was taking my mom to all the doctor's appointments, and she was sharp as a tack. She had her list, and that was great. But I could see how, like, a lot of people just wouldn't be that prepared, or they're going to forget something,
Yeah.
And now, if you're seeing multiple specialists and people are getting on different medications and things like that, like, you have to have somebody monitoring all of that,
Yeah, I
because
come in
nobody
with
does.
a list of medications, and
Yep.
I have, notes from other providers that I can bring to, a lot of times people will be asked questions, and they forget what the answers are from the last appointment that they had. Sometimes they don't know exactly what medications there are if somebody else is managing their medications. Um, so it's very helpful for people who need it. It's very helpful.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, One other question I had, like, let's say you have someone who really is independent and wants to remain in their home as long as possible. What recommendations do you have, or what things can you do for somebody like that?
I have a lot of clients who are independent, who are very independent. Some of them choose to have me do things like go to their doctor's appointments. But really just talking to them about what they want and what they want short term, what they want long term, and making sure that they're supported and they know what the options are for them if things change with their health. What would you plan? What would you want to do? And make sure that they know also like the reality of what the medical system, how it works, and what their real choices are. Um, it's making sure it's really the advocacy part as well, just making sure that they know the options and making sure that when they're in those situations that somebody is advocating for them. It's really important to have that piece because you can get just lost in the shuffle, and it's a very scary place to be without somebody by your side.
Yeah, 100%. Yep, 100% for sure. Um, Let me shift back to just having conversations with people, right? Like, we talked about how you wish people would have these conversations before there's a crisis and, before people are scrambling and that kind of thing. Why do you think preparing for a serious illness and possibly end of life is so difficult for families?
Well, let's face it, we're human. We tend to avoid things that scare us. And the funny thing is, we'll spend months planning a wedding or a vacation, but somehow,
Exactly.
yeah, somehow, but when we need to talk about who's going to make our healthcare decisions, which is so important, if we can't speak for ourselves, somehow that feels too uncomfortable. So it's a tricky state of affairs. There's family dynamics involved. Honestly, in illness, injury, hospice, end of life process, it brings out the best and worst in everybody. So again, the more that we can do in advance, having slightly uncomfortable conversations when things are calm, always prepares us for a better outcome. Because preparation isn't about expecting the worst. It's about making sure that the people we love aren't left guessing when things get hard.
Yeah, 100%. And especially if there's a bunch of siblings involved. I mean, I'm gonna say luckily because I've seen some crazy stuff, but luckily I'm an only child and I was the one, basically it was me and her. My dad had passed a long time ago, and it was just the two of us kind of making these decisions together. But I have friends who have siblings who have completely different opinions on what they want to do. One wants the parent to move into a assisted living, one wants to
Yeah.
keep them at home, one wants, like this kind of palliative care, one wants something completely different. It could be very tricky.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I have come into that situation a lot where there's people on different pages, and I find that it's very helpful for me to go in and consult with them. Even if it's just a one time to get everybody on the same page and to give them a real picture of, okay, well, and also put their opinions together. This is what all of you think separately, and here's what's actually going on in the home. Here are the barriers, here are the risks, and here are the strengths of what's happening in the home. And, here are the options for you.
Yeah. I think toward that end, having clarity and also having a flexible plan, having your plan A, B, C, and D, right? These are the ideal options if everything goes as we hope it does. And then here are our alternative options if things shift so that we can be flexible and flow with the change rather than, being in panic mode that things aren't going the way that we had expected. That's a huge piece.
Yeah, for sure. So walk me through a little bit, like what's it like to work with both of you? How would people connect with you, and what are like who do I call first, and what are the steps and all that?
Well, I mean,
So
depending on what's going on. Sorry, go ahead, Jess.
So yeah, it depends on what's going on. You can connect with us. Just call our numbers, and it starts with a conversation, and both of us can figure out where you are and what fits best. Um, it may not be me, it may not be Melissa. We also, if we are listening to your story and starting with that, we may point you to a something that's better than what we're providing. It starts with a free phone call, and we go from there. It's it, we want to set you up with what works for you and what you need.
Melissa, anything different that you'd say, or?
Just that by contacting us through our websites, we can offer complimentary consultations to make sure that we're meeting your needs where you are, understanding your beliefs and your individual values, your preferences, in your lifestyle and in your care. What matters most to you and your family? That's what we advocate for. It's not about what we believe in, what we would like to see happen for you. It's supporting you for what matters most to you and your family.
Yeah, and obviously it could be the individual that's contacting you or the caregiver, right?
Yes.
Siblings or children, or yeah.
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 Um, we've talked a lot about just the stress and everything, of these conversations or trying to coordinate things. Well, how would you recommend caregivers take care of themselves while caring for someone else?
Mm. It's really important. There's that old story of, on an airplane, they say, put on your oxygen mask first, and it's starting to sound really trite. But we are facing a lot of caregiver burnout these days in healthcare as healthcare providers and individual family members caring for their loved ones. Caregiving can really consume your entire life without you even noticing it's happening. It really takes over your identity. In many cases, meals need to be made, medications given. There's lots of tasks, right? So somewhere in there, the caregiver tends to disappear if they don't have resources in place, if they don't have strategies in place to build resilience in advance, stress relief, resources to provide shifts, putting together, having someone to delegate to, having someone to make sure that you're not burning the candle at both ends. So self-care doesn't have to mean like a spa day or something grand or pretending that everything's fine. It can mean 10 minutes outside, getting some sunshine. It can mean asking someone to sit with your mom while you shower, eating an actual meal and sleeping and letting somebody else help. And also, asking us for resources in terms of what nourishes your soul. And that's where I love your community because um, tapping into what works best, saturating the senses with different complementary and alternative modalities, whatever works best for that individual, finding those micro moments of joy and nourishment throughout the day can make a world of difference how we're best able to bring our best selves to the bedside.
I want to talk more about that, but we're going to jump to a break. You're listening to the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. You can learn more about me at www.drdianehayden.com. And I'm talking today with Melissa Lewis. Her website is www.sharingheartspace.com, and Jessica Kowal at www.compassnurseconsulting.com. And just as we went to break, we were basically talking about, how the caregiver can basically take care of themselves. And I know firsthand exactly, you mentioned, Melissa, that people can kind of like people as a caregiver can almost disappear. And I know exactly what that means because when the first time my mom actually fell twice, but the first time when she went to rehab and me not really knowing much about the place and all that, I mean, I was probably there, I would say like 6 hours a day, even though she's being perfectly cared for. But, it was just getting her adjusted to that place and, making sure that she was okay and bringing her protein shakes and whatever. I mean, if I had like a minute to myself, it was a lot. And I'm like, after 4 or 5 weeks of this, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And again, I'm an only child. So it was more, you know, all of that responsibility fell on me pretty much. But I'm sure that there are people who have siblings in other states, and it's almost like they're an only child because they may be the only person close to their parent. So I love that you brought up the connection to my network of holistic providers, because I feel like I finally had to basically say to myself, like, like, you need to get a massage, or you need to go get an energy healing or something. You need to take this time. She's fine over there. It's a great spot place. Nothing's going to happen. You need to just take a step back. And luckily, I have that amazing community of people that I can call on. So yeah, that's important to me. Anything else that you guys wanted to say just about what the caregiver can do?
Yeah, caregiver stress is real. I think it's becoming more recognized now. Um, with healthcare, a lot of doctors are good about asking the caregiver, "How are you doing?" And beside just the time that's put into coordinating care or visiting, just to keep in touch and make sure that you know what's going on. Beside that, it's the weight of some of these life-changing decisions, small ones and big ones. Um, it's a lot to carry, and it does take a toll on you. So a lot of times I'm working with families, and while we're putting in supports to help support their loved one, or an independent individual that just needs a little more help, we're also talking about boundaries. And a lot of times that's the adult children putting boundaries on themselves. I'm giving this piece to this person, and I'm going to trust this person to make sure that it's done and it's safe. And a lot of people have a difficult time with that, but once they put that in, it is a huge relief, I have seen with my clients.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Um, so Melissa, I'm going to ask you, because this is, what you're directly involved with. What have people at the end of life taught you about living?
So much. I've been working in this field in various capacities for over 30 years now, and I think dying has taught me far more about living than I ever would have expected, about the resilience of the human spirit, the beauty that's possible, um, bearing witness, staying present. Those pieces are so, so much far more important than keeping the house perfectly clean. Nobody was ever worried about, nobody ever focused primarily on that. They weren't worried about answering enough emails or making sure they, had the house perfectly clean. It was about relationships. Relationships matter. Forgiveness matters. Being present matters. Saying what needs to be said matters before it's too late. Because life is so very precious. And perhaps one of the greatest lessons of all of that is that we don't have to wait until we're dying to start paying attention to that. We can start practicing that now.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And, I think it's, again, people are, I don't know if it's just fear or what it is, but they just don't want to think about those things. They don't want to think about their parent being gone. They don't want to think about what the person might have to go through. And, we've been putting this in the perspective a lot of like parents and adult children, but this could be any relationship, right? It could be your spouse who's going through a terminal diagnosis, or God forbid, a child or your sibling, right? It's any of the relationships, right? And we, like, it's just our, I don't know, like our society, this country is kind of like, wait till the last minute to say what you need to say. And sadly, a lot of times people don't get the chance to do that.
Yeah, it's a lot to process. So part of what we do is to help prepare people for those conversations. Find ways to lead in, find ways to find comfort with discomfort, find ways to build that resilience so that no matter, come what may, no matter what, we're prepared to face change with more clarity, confidence, and compassion. And it's part of why we had talked about offering a free gift for all of your audience. It's an opportunity to have a personalized peace of mind planning session. People always think that preparation is just documentations. It's important. It's important to get all those documents in place, all those, filling in the gaps, dotting all those I's, crossing all those T's, finding where they are, knowing where to find passwords, knowing all those pieces. Those are essential. And there's other components that we never really think about. And that's making sure your loved ones understand why you made those choices so they can move forward with those decisions, feeling more confident and knowing that they're honoring your wishes to the best of their capacity. And that way they are able to focus on what matters most. And they are able to find ways to provide that deep comfort, that deep connection, even when touch and verbal communication fall away. There are beautiful ways to connect and maintain that relationship and support one another through to the very end and beyond.
I love that. So, again, so you're offering a free gift to anyone who's listening to this, basically to connect. How do you want people to connect with you for that?
So there'll be a QR code on the screen. You can either go through that, scanning the code, or go to the website, sharingheartspace.com. And it will lead you to a page to connect with me so that we can have a personalized one-to-one session so we can talk about what's most important to you. Where are you on the journey of preparation and in finding your pathway to peace of mind, to make sure that you and your loved ones have everything that they need every step of the way. And again, as Jessica mentioned before, if there's some pieces that we're not able to provide, we're happy to share resources with you. We're happy to point you in the right direction that best meets your needs and your family's needs.
I love that. Yep. So the QR code on the screen, and if you've gotten this show through your email, through your by Community at Natural Nutmeg, that'll also be included in the email as well. So any last parting words of wisdom that either of you want to give to our listeners?
It's free to reach out. It's free to see if we can offer you anything, or if we can point you in a direction that might help you. It only takes a few minutes and you're in control of all of your decisions. So give us a call and see if we can help.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, thank you both, Melissa and Jessica. And I'm just going to say, as someone who wished I knew the two of you before all those things happened with my mom,
Yeah.
please reach out to these ladies because I would have done it in a heartbeat. Like if I had the chance to do it over again, it was extremely overwhelming and all that to do it myself, and to just not even have anybody to bounce ideas off of, or, just get suggestions and, more information. So thank you both, Melissa and Jessica, for being on today. It was great to have you both.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Take care.
Yeah, and I want to thank all of you for tuning into the Dr. Diane Show. Please join me the first and third Thursdays at 11 a.m. Eastern and 8 a.m. Pacific, and I will see you back here next time. Have a great day. Thank you for tuning into the Dr. Diane Show, revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. Tune in every Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern on transformationtalkradio.com. Center your thoughts on what you want and shut the door on every suggestion of fear, worry, or lack from your own consciousness or the consciousness around you. Once you master that, everything is possible. To learn more about me, Dr. Diane, and receive a free digital subscription of my magazine, visit naturalnutmeg.com.